let's get the pro forma balance sheet done. So we already did the income statement. Balance sheet's going to be similar. We're going to use the pro forma revenue and percent of sales where it makes sense to do pro forma balance sheet. So I'm just going to copy the balance sheet, move copy, create a copy, and name it pro forma income statement. Oh, not income statement. That name is already taken. Yeah, because it should be balance sheet, not income statement. Okay, balance sheet. There we go. Alright, and so we're going to project. So I'm going to go insert 2015 pro forma. Alright, there we go. Doesn't need to be that big. You know, we're going to do anything that should be percent of sales for sure is what I'm going to do first. So things like, you know, receivables and inventories, things like that should naturally follow sales, because as you have more sales, you'll have more receivables, because assuming that the new sales have a similar percentage of receivables. Inventory, as you sell more, you should have to hold more inventory, etc. So they should follow with sales. Things like prepaid expenses and you know, deferred income should probably not have anything to do with sales, but we can use things like common size to kind of check any of the things we're unsure of. Cash might move because you need more working capital as your company grows, so it might move with sales, it might not, and so we'll kind of mess around with that. You know, but for things like accounts receivable, it should move with sales. So I'm going to go ahead and again we want to equals average. Okay, and we want to do this level relative to sales, and so you know we can use in this case pro forma or the regular income statement. I use the pro forma here since I'm going to use that for 15. I'm just going to go ahead and use it here too. So I just want company sale total revenue. So I'm going to divide by total revenue for that, and then I'm going to hit a comma. And I want, instead of C5 on the next one, I want to move over one, so I'm going to do D5 over pro forma. It's going to be, that was 14, so this is 13. So you're going to see C5, C6, and D5, D6. And this is why I want to use pro forma income statement. On the other income statement, they would be offset slightly. So comma, I'm going to want E5 over pro forma income statement E6, comma, F5 over pro forma F5, and comma G5 over pro forma G5. So that's going to set up the average. We'll go lock it in just a second. And then I'm going to multiply that, you know, this average percentage over the last 5 years times the new sales revenue from our pro forma income statement. I'm going to hit enter. 306. You can check pretty quickly if it makes sense. So revenue actually goes down a little bit from last year, and so seeing accounts receivable go down makes some sense, and it didn't go down very much. Okay, so you know it's closer to 2012, and you can kind of check what was income in 2012. You know, versus now, and so it looks reasonable. There's nothing too crazy. Now I want to be able to replicate this down though. I'm going to go ahead and take away the decimals since we don't have them on anything else. And so when I bring it down, I'm going to want, so when I move down to inventory, I'm going to want this to start at C6. So when I drag it down, I want that to float. So it'll do C6, D6, E6 instead of C5, D5, E5, right? So when I drag it down, though, it's going to move my denominator references, which I don't want it to do. I want it to remain looking at D6 on the other sheet. So I'm going to lock all the denominator references. I'm going to lock the 6, so as I drag it, replicate it down, it won't be a problem. So lock that 6. Is that all in pro forma? Pro forma, pro forma, pro forma, pro forma. So there's those, and then the sales as well. So if I just put $1 in front of all the 6s, now I can just hit Control C, copy that, come down, Control V, and it should work just fine. So we should see all of these drop off just a little bit from the previous year. Again, things I know should move with sales are what I'm going to do first. PP&E, you may not necessarily grow or shrink PP&E exactly with sales. It may be you build the plant up and then sales follow, or vice versa. So goodwill definitely not, intangible definitely not, investment none. It's restricted cash, doesn't look like it. And again, you see this 000 is only 300. Probably not going to track sales. Other assets, deferred income taxes. It's possible other assets does, but we can check those sorts of things here in a bit. Accounts payable should track sales in the same way that accounts receivable does. Income taxes payable might or might not. It doesn't look like it. So 61, 142, 97. It looks like it bounces all over the place. Same thing with short-term borrowing, etc. This doesn't look like it's tracked sales at all. So you can kind of look and try and figure out what things should. Long-term debt is definitely not. Non-current liabilities doesn't look like it. You see a lot of these things on balance sheet don't actually track sales necessarily. Nope, doesn't look like it. Doesn't look like it. And again, some of this is just feel. If you're really unsure about anything, so that looks like the only things that really track sales very well. Cash. Then I'm going to go over to common size balance sheet and see if there's anything else that looks like it tracks sales. So you can see, since these are all percents of sales, it used to be 17%, it's all the way down to 7%. Sales have not, it hasn't stayed the same basically. So we should see similar numbers across here if it tracks sales. So if you see accounts receivable, it stayed in that 3 to 4% range, and so it tracks sales pretty well. Inventories, like I said, 2.25. It has gone up a little bit. It looks like relative to sales, but they track a little bit. So you should see similar things. Prepaid expenses actually looks like it might track sales pretty well. So that's one we could do. And again, if you work for the company, you would have more information about some of this too. But this might be effective as a percent of sales. Deferred income, you'd say, well, it stays in the same range, 0.73 to 1.41, but actually 0.73 to 1.41, this is double that. So you have to be careful when you're looking at percentages, whereas like this one is slightly further away, but the percent difference between the biggest and smallest is actually much smaller than 0.73 versus 1.41, so you have to be very careful. Advertising cooperative assets looks close, so maybe we could start using, maybe we could use that one. It's arguable. Doesn't look like it to me. So again, a lot of this is feel for now, and then as you kind of do things like this, you'll get a better idea of kind of how, and especially like I said, if you work for a company, you get a better idea of how your accounts kind of work. But even when sales go down, PP&E seems to go up. Goodwill has nothing to do with it, etc. So I don't see anything on, other assets kind of does, but I still don't think it should, and so I don't see anything convincing me to switch it to percent of sales. Accounts payable we already did. Income taxes payable, definitely not. Definitely not. Advertising cooperative liabilities looks like it could. It stayed really pretty flat relative to sales, so this one might be percent of sales. And generally things like debt and equity don't, maybe short-term debt in some situations, but not for this company obviously. Yum doesn't. Nope. Most equity things don't track sales. That's just the way it is. So looks like nothing here really does. Okay. Yeah, I don't see anything. Okay, so let's just, the rest of these that are not calculated, so I mean calculated we're still going to have calculated. The rest of these I'm just going to hit equals the previous year for now. And then we would ask for guidance from other parts of the company to fill in some of these things. especially like PP&E, this is going to look like net of depreciation. Things like depreciation, you're going to ask an accounting group, what depreciation is going to look like for next year, and they're going to be able to give you a whole lot better answer because they have the Macros tables for our different assets and stuff. So, so I would just carry a lot of these numbers over since we don't know what they're going to be for now. Retained earnings, accumulated, non-controlling. That's fine for now. And then we can refine this more later if we want to. That's generally how I would start. So you see income statement, most things track sales. Oh, I don't have to. I can just drag this over to calculate the new. So you can just drag the formulas over for the calculative cells. And that's about it. So balance sheet pro formas, typically aren't a lot driven by sales. It's driven by other issues. So we can do that. We can drag our check figures over to make sure it's still 0. And it's not. And that's not unusual because for pro formas, since we're doing percent of sales, it's not going to come over perfectly. The percents aren't going to be the same necessarily for the ones we're putting in assets versus others. And this is where we get into that, again, that DFN, that financing needed, and then we would ask someone in the company up above us, if we're doing this sort of work generally, who is going to tell us, are we going to finance with equity or we're going to finance with debt and things like that. And that's where that cash budget we already built would come in handy as well. Okay, so for now that's fine, and we can refine it a little more later, but that's the main idea on the balance sheet pro forma.